Hello everyone, Miss Carrie here. Throughout November, I'm sharing some simple holiday cards that you can make. Today, you're going to learn how to level up your die cut layers using supplies you might already have in your craft room. I can't wait to show you how this card comes together. I've gathered two of my favorites from Trinity Stamps. The Elegant Christmas Sentiment Stamp Set is such a wonderful collection for Christmas. There are some lovely script sentiments and smaller phrases. In a recent video, I shared the Emergency Card Essentials die collections. I'm going to show you how to elevate your card layers using these dies. As I create today's project, I'll bring in a few additional supplies. If you would like a list of the items I'm using, one has been provided for you in the description below. Let's get started with the project. I'm going to start by selecting some pattern papers for my card. I want a softer color palette, and these are going to create an amazing design. I have the ornament backer, and these three pieces that will layer together for my card background. Off to the side there, I have an ornament topper. I'll be cutting that from white cardstock, and I'll share a fun way to elevate that little piece. There are two sets of Emergency Card Essentials die sets on the Trinity Stamp site. These were designed by Sarah, a professional card maker who creates what she likes to call emergency cards. The purpose of these die sets are to help you create cards ahead of time without a sentiment. When you need a card, you can choose one of the pre-made designs from your pile, and then you add a sentiment that fits the occasion. Now, these dies are designed for card makers, but as a scrapbooker, I feel like many of these pieces would be perfect for my pages. As I'm cutting the ornament pieces, I realized that this would be a great time to cut out a few accents as well. I cut the main ornament piece from the scallop pattern, but I would like to add a stripe across the middle. I'm going to use this die to cut that out, and it will fit perfectly over the top. From the Garden Flowers die set, I'm cutting some floral pieces to make a poinsettia. I have two layers from white, and I'll cut the third base layer from the center of this green pattern. Now, this is the base layer for my card. This smaller rectangle is going to sit in the center of it. So instead of using another green pattern piece for the flower, I'm just going to cut the leaves from this. Once the card's assembled, you'll never know that this happened. All right, let's start putting together this card. The three rectangle layers are going to sit in the center and my ornament over the top. This here is a great basic card design, but we are going to learn how to level up our cards today. So let's bring in a little bit more color. I didn't want this piece here to go to waste. I did cut the ornament from the center, but there is still enough of a frame for my card. Take a look at the difference this makes when I add that additional layer. I'm going to go ahead and glue this down real quick. Now, the next two layers have a great contrast to them, and they're fine on their own, but I like to add stitching. I'm going to go run this green layer through my sewing machine real quick. This elevates the card so much, doesn't it? For those of you who don't like to sew, there are a few other ways that you can level up this layer. I'm going to start with some score lines around the edge. I'm using my paper trimmer and a stylus, but you can also use a scoreboard for this. Once the lines have been added, you can see that this creates a nice frame around the edge. To make them stand out more, fold the cardstock on the score line and lightly sand the edge. If you're using a white core cardstock, you'll be able to create a nice white frame. Sand all 4 score lines and create an elevated border for your card project. All right, let's adhere our last rectangle layer down and create the ornament. Here are the 3 pieces that I cut out from pattern paper. The first 2 are just fine on their own, but we can level up these layers by adding a 3rd piece. I'm going to trim this down so that it sits right across the center of the ornament. I chose just to cut 1 additional layer, but you can use your dies to cut out multiple ornament shapes and create layers of stripes or patterns. The die set also comes with some stars that you could add to your ornaments. Isn't this lovely? Now we can elevate it even more with a little bit of silver thread. I have placed 2 strips of double-sided tape on the back, and I'm going to use that to hold the thin thread in place. You can wrap it around once or multiple times. This can also be done with embroidery floss, twine, or ribbon. If you don't have thread in your craft stash, you could use some pearls, enamel dots, buttons, or sequins. There are so many ways that you could elevate this ornament die cut. As I add another row of thread, I would love it if you took a moment to let me know that you're enjoying this project by tapping the thumbs up icon or the subscribe button below. I also appreciate it when you leave comments and let me know how you plan to use what you learned today. Actions like this help the channel grow. All right, our ornament is complete. I have this topper and the flower layers to add. Again, these are fine on their own, but we're learning how to level up our layers. So let's do that with some embossing powder. I'm applying embossing ink with a dauber onto each of the floral pieces. I'm going to sprinkle these with some frosted crystal powder over the top. This is a clear textured powder that adds just a small amount of sparkle. I'm going to shake off the excess and heat set that powder. I know that it might seem rather simple, but it's techniques like this that can elevate your card designs. Adding a layer of ink, brushing some glitter over the top, or using embossing powders can add so much to a design. Now that these are set, let me bring them up to the camera. It is a little difficult to see on the white, but you can really see it in the green. It adds some texture, shine, and a little bit of sparkle. I'm going to heat emboss the ornament topper as well. I'm going to add embossing ink over the top, dip it into some silver tinsel powder, and heat set it. Tinsel powder has a texture to it, and that silver color matches the thread I added to the ornament. I love how this looks. While I have my embossing tools out, I'm going to quickly heat emboss a sentiment. I'm using the word rejoice for my card, but there are multiple sentiments in this collection that will work. To match the rest of the layers, I'm using a fine silver embossing powder. Fine or detail powder is best for thin sentiments like this. I like to place my heat tool underneath my sentiment. This prevents the air from disturbing the powder before it's set. The Elegant Christmas Sentiments has a matching die set that will cut out the script and small phrase sentiments. I'm going to cut this out right quick and then we can finish up our card. I have already added the topper and now I'll pop the flower and sentiment in place. In the center of the flower, I'm going to add some silver flatback pearls. Of course, you could use any color that you like. This adds so much to the card, doesn't it? Now, before I go, I have one last tip for you. I'm going to show you how to make a tiny bow with that fine silver thread. I'm going to thread a needle first. This is going to work best with a large darning needle or embroidery needle. To create the bow, I'm going to use a fork. Yes, this is a standard dinner fork. I'm going to hold the end of the thread in place with my thumb, then wrap this thread around the 4 tines a few times. Now I'm going to use that needle to create the center knot. I'm going to bring this to the back, wrap it underneath, and then bring it back to the front and up to the top. I'm going to repeat this process a few times, pulling it tight as I gather up the loops. Now I need to tie a knot in the back. I like to wrap the thread around my finger, then I pull the needle through. This is going to slide right off the tines of the fork, and now we have a tiny bow. I just need to fluff it a bit, and then I'll secure it to my card with a glue dot. Wow, I did not realize how many techniques were going to be packed into this video. I love sharing new ways that you can elevate your card designs. How many of these techniques are you going to try? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The cards you create can become amazing creations with just a few simple techniques. By adding additional layers, texture, embossing powders, mixed media, and thread, you can level up your layers in just a few steps. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope this project inspired you to try something new. If you have any questions about this project or the supplies I used, feel free to post those in the comments below. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.